Oh, I can see that. Yeah.
There's a link that says shop all products.
It's super weird. It doesn't come up in the search engine.
Yeah, I assume that'll change as we actually sell some, and so.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, welcome to the first ad ever. Phil, you're part of it. This is the beginning of the episode. I've just decided. What are you looking at right now, Phil?
I am looking at t-shirts online.
What kind of t-shirts? Jesus fucking Christ.
Awesome t-shirts with incredible graphics on them.
Whose t-shirts?
T-shirts for the podcast.
Heavy Hands t-shirts.
Podcast.
That one, yes. Heavy Hands with artwork by John Galong, MMA's one of MMA's greatest graphic designers and artists, who makes tons of wonderful work, and made a beautiful graphic that you've probably seen on show thumbnails, on episode thumbnails and whatnot over the years. You can get that shit on a shirt now, or a hoodie, or let's see here, a canvas tote bag, or a phone case, or just as a framed print. It's a beautiful piece of art. And you can find us on Redbubble. However, you may not find us in the search just yet until business picks up. So make sure that you check the description of this episode, or maybe find the pinned tweet on my Twitter @BoxingBush, and you'll find a reply threaded there with the relevant link. But make sure you check out Heavy Hands and buy our merch on redbubble.com. Do you want to say buy it again? I can edit that in so I wasn't talking over you.
Buy it.
Sort of like a sort of goose-like tenor to that. Buy it. All right.
Give us money.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connery, which with me, as always, is Phil McKenzie, and we are coming to you in special, one-time-only mono format. Was I paranoid that one or two of the many listeners of this show would notice, and therefore had to mention it up top to spare myself the humiliation of having someone else point it out? Yes! Phil, thoughts on this psychological drama playing out before your eyes and ears?
I feel like there's going to be one or two extremely weirdly vocal people who will be very upset to hear us coming out of both sides of their audio systems at equal sound.
Yeah, probably. Tough shit, guys. Welcome to the show. You're going to enjoy it anyway. We're talking about UFC 256. And
I can't believe we're going to be letting down our already sterling reputation for incredible audio quality.
For audio quality. That's right. I know. That's what you come here for. But folks, you know, we can't all be winners. It can't all be perfect. This card is good, Phil.
It is very good.
Like, that is really worth saying, because cards lately, I mean, the last, I think it was, again, I think I'm cribbing this stat from Caposa, but I think the last 6 events essentially of the year will have had their main events affected by COVID, because even this was not originally supposed to be Figueiredo Moreno, which I am, you know me, listeners, like I don't know what's happening in 3 weeks. As far as the UFC schedule goes, I'm right in the middle of it, smack dab in the middle of it constantly. And so when I looked and hit, next scheduled event, I was stunned that this was the fight we were getting. Weren't we just talking about this matchup? It was like 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, this is one of the fastest title fight turnarounds I can think of.
Yeah, it's insane.
Even John Jones, during his
his early
4 title
run.
defenses in a year, or whatever it was that he did, he wasn't doing this kind of stuff.
No, absolutely not. Figueiredo beat Perez on November 21st. So that is like 2 weeks ago. And Moreno was even more recent, wasn't he? No, same event. I mean, good Lord. So it's happening. I mean, I guess I get it, right? Both guys are probably still in shape. Both of them had extremely short and relatively easy fights where they took essentially no damage. So fine, I guess. Making, I guess, the best of a bad situation. And you know what, honestly? Maybe one of the few circumstances that could have conspired to have a flyweight title fight as the main event of this otherwise stacked pay-per-view card. So, good for the flyweights, even though that means it probably won't sell anything. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically one of these things where corporate incentives come around to make something that's actually surprisingly worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
The UFC has to put on a mandated number of pay-per-view events. They need to ensure that, they're presumably contractually obligated to have title fights in the main events of pay-per-views because they'll have been.
Mm-hmm.
So they're able to just go to the flyweights and say, here's 200% of what your purse would be. Namely, $8.
$60K.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can run you can be in a title fight on incredibly short notice.
Mm-hmm.
One of these things where, it works out well for us because it's a fantastic matchup. I think that, together with having to rebook cancellations and just the fact that they're like, well, everyone hates flyweight, so we should stack this one. They have actually put together a really thrilling card.
Yeah. For the first time, what feels like an eternity, I looked at this and thought, how are we going to fit all of this in the episode? It's a very good problem to have, to be honest. So hopefully Figueiredo and Moreno aren't getting screwed too badly. It probably is a windfall for them, relatively speaking, because what the UFC clearly values right now is people who can step up on short notice and fight frequently. They need content. They need content creators rather than fighters. And Figueiredo and Moreno. I mean, Figueiredo is like the gig economy lord. This man, I think, is still working 6 or 7 different jobs in addition to being a UFC champion. So, hey, good for them. Should we talk about the fight? Oh, wait. What else is on this card? Why do we keep saying it's so stacked? Well, the co-main event is Tony Ferguson versus Chucky Olives. Or as I termed it when I saw a truly troubling face swap between the two men. C. Ferg and Tony Olives, because you don't really realize how truly similar these men look until you see their faces combined. It's a fight between...
Subtly horrifying.
Yeah, it really is. It's an uncanny valley sort of feeling. That one's going to be an absolute banger. I don't even have to say that. You heard those two names. You know what kind of fight that's going to be. Renato Moicano is fighting Rafael. God damn these Brazilians. He's fighting Rafael Fiziev. In what should be a thrilling lightweight bout. Fiziev, fantastic technician, really aggressive fighter, and Renato Moicano, sort of similar, but bigger and with the ground game to go with it. So that should be exciting. And Phil, our boy, the king of quarantine, is back. Kevin Holland is fighting Jacare Souza, which is not really as interesting to me as the Hermanson fight he was supposed to get. I guess hopefully he's over the COVID that he got that pulled him out of that fight. That was this last weekend's main event, right? So I guess he's fine, right? What is happening?
I mean, again, this is the corporate incentives of the UFC that they've got people on the fastest possible COVID returning cycle.
Is it even possible? When did he test positive? It can't have even been 14 days ago.
I think it was because they rebooked Vittori. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a question of when did you get tested positive? When did the positive test come through? When did you actually get tested? And when were you cleared? So I mean, theoretically, I suppose it could have happened, but yeah, the UFC is obviously it has done with other people what's his face, Iwan Kutalaba, being very, very aggressive with its rebookings. It's again, can you get in there? Get in there.
Yeah, that's really the landscape we're living in now. Further down the card, I'm not 100% sure if we will have time to talk about this, although we may squeeze a bonus episode out of it. Cub Swanson versus Daniel Pineda. Sounds like a fucking banger. Mackenzie Dern versus Virna Jandiroba. One of those fights for Mackenzie Dern that is actually like potentially interesting on the ground. Gavin Tucker, Billy Quarantillo is just a guaranteed action fight with a fun clash of styles, like relentless pressure versus outside wrestle boxing. And then we were supposed to have the Leech, Li Jingliang versus Dwight Grant, but Dwight Grant has pulled out because he got COVID. Everyone's just getting COVID. Everyone's pulling out. Don't worry, Dwight Grant and Li Jingliang will be fighting. Li Jingliang will be fighting like a janitor this weekend, and then he will also still be fighting Dwight Grant like next week. And they're going to set up a special event on Thursday just to make sure they can rush him back in there as quickly as possible. It's a weird situation, but Phil, the fights are good. So let's talk about him. Enough fucking preamble. Jesus Christ, that was 8.5 minutes. Tell me about Deiveson Figueiredo, the flyweight champion.
Like, both these guys are coming off sort of weird fights, right? That card a couple of weeks ago was very fun and sort of didn't really show much apart from that these guys are super dangerous grapplers.
Yeah. That's about it.
So yeah, it's hard to take much from their most recent performances. But if we're talking Figueiredo, I mean, it's just like pure dynamism is the name of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got, I think, for his weight class, we might have mentioned it, like Francis Ngannou-esque like amount of knockdowns in his fights, and he's got a pretty aggressive ground game.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, he doesn't have the greatest agecraft in game. He has a weirdly like bantamweight approach. He doesn't actually throw a whole lot, and mostly kind of looks for the counter. Often like gives up position, putting his back to the cage to do so. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's an interesting question for him against Brandon Moreno. Because originally, I sat there thinking, this is going to be a pretty tough fight for Moreno, just because, like, I'm still not sure how much I can trust him against an aggressive counterpuncher.
Sure.
Because, you know, we saw how that went against Pantoja. And obviously, Moreno's improved a lot since then.
I mean, Kai Kara-France and Jussi Formiga are nothing to sneeze at as counterpunchers, and he had two very impressive performances against them. So I think it is definitely fair to say he's improved his boxing craft. Mm-hmm. But there were some moments in that Brandon Royval fight, again, so short. I think that was really what made it weird, is that you just didn't really see everything you expected to see out of Moreno, only to be reminded of the fact that, as always, he's an absolutely superb grappler. But he did not really get his boxing going. Whereas, like, it was a minute into his fight with Kai Kara-France, and that was a year ago now, that he was already throwing his straight punches and throwing combinations and looking very relaxed and exceedingly confident. And he did not have that in his striking against Royval. So that's a bit concerning.
Yeah, it was a wild fight. And that was what I was thinking. Like, how much? So Pantoja as a counterpuncher, I think, is like, obviously, you know, he basically got beaten by Figueiredo at that game.
Sure.
So, you know, you might just be tempted to say, well, Figueiredo is bigger than Pantoja. He's got more power. He hits harder, and so on. But he also counterpunches in combination.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much of Moreno's struggles are because his striking form breaks down once people kind of move past that comfortable, like, that comfortable jab range, and he can't just scare them off with combinations in the pocket kind of thing. Like, how much does he struggle with counterpunching versus how much does he struggle with, like, combination counterpunching and with, like, aggressive blitzes? Because Figueiredo is a counterpuncher, but what he's not is a big combination hitter.
Yeah,
I mean, his stance isn't built for it.
Right.
His it's just not his way, really.
The way he throws isn't built for it. It does not engender follow-up punches, really.
Yeah. And the other thing is, again, probably another old chestnut from my end. How much does Moreno like the open stance dynamic? Because I felt like that was a big part of the a big part of his more impressive striking performances. You know, they have been against orthodox fighters where he can establish his jab. And Royval, I think, where he was coming out like pretty aggressively as southpaw. And you know, a lot of Moreno's ugly strikes in that brief exchange that we saw were
wild overhand
right hands. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So like, how much are we just like gonna go to the old chestnut of like, this guy's a good striker against orthodox people?
Yeah, I think there's a possibility of that. And boy, we really should crank out a bonus episode, because I actually really would like to talk about that from last weekend's main event with you at some point, because I do think it was relevant, the whole Jack Hermanson versus Southpaw's canard. Yeah, I think there's probably a part of that. I actually hadn't really thought of Royval coming out in southpaw. He was super aggressive, which I don't think Moreno liked either. I also think the way he was fighting, compared to what I expected, really gave me range finding difficulties sort of vibes. Right? When you see a nice technical fight, like Jack Hermanson, for example, last weekend against Marvin Vettori, when you see a technical fighter who builds off of their jab, wanging right hands at the opponent, it's because like they don't know how close they are. They're just guessing. And they're guessing ferociously, because that's how you should guess if you don't want to, let the opponent know that you're tentative and you don't really know what you're doing. So I think it could very well be a combination of all those factors against Royval. But it's also hard to say it's hard to say for me how much that would have stayed like a dominating factor in the fight as it played out if it had gone on longer. I'm not 100% sure. And I'm also not 100% sure how good Figueiredo is as a southpaw.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think he'll occasionally go southpaw. I do not think he's not like a natural switcher.
Yeah, like he's already a one-strike kind of guy, so it doesn't actually like change his game as fundamentally as it does some guys. There are a lot of combination punchers who become one-strike guys once they go southpaw. So, I think Figueiredo's whole like distance game and his timing and everything is still more or less the same, but like his best weapon is that right hand. And he doesn't throw it short as like a southpaw style hook all that often that I can recall. So yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, I think it's a big factor in this fight is probably just like staying power, pace, stamina. It's an essential thing at flyweight. And while in Figueiredo's last fight we talked about how these are two bantamweights, I think in this case we are looking at a little more of a case of like bantamweight Figueiredo versus genuine flyweight Moreno. In that Moreno has, I think, 5 rounds of extremely good cardio. Even in his like ass whooping at the hands of Sergio Pettis, he still had some power and some agility in the 5th round of that fight, and he did nothing but just get beaten up. So I think that is an interesting factor as well, because I don't know, like maybe this is like my Joe Rogan moment where I just look at Figueiredo and I see the way he fights and I assume he's got to get tired, even though I haven't necessarily seen him all that gassed previously. But
I don't know if it's a. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's not even so much of a tiring a thing of him getting tired as it is that like he just doesn't have the strike rate unless he's badly hurting people. He's not I think going to be all that reliable at winning rounds. I mean, that's something which sort of has characterized Joel Romero's career.
Sure.
Is close, weird decisions that he's think he's more likely deserved to win decisions that he hasn't gotten. But, either way, he's not a decisive round-winning fighter.
Yeah, except that, remember that Pantoja fight?
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely make Figueiredo up his pace if he feels it's necessary. If he feels the pressure, he will throw more combinations. He will just sit down and trade and accept a faster pace. And that's what makes me think of conditioning, is that I have to imagine that if, say, the first round of this fight does not go well for Brandon Moreno, right? He's struggling to get his range or his timing. He gets hit with a big shot and it kind of shakes him a little bit. That's all well and good. Moreno is, if all goes according to plan, he's gonna have to build and do more and more and more with each passing round to get over that expected early hump. And it is what he typically does. Certainly again, that Kai Kara-France fight, just upping the pace and throwing more and more combinations, and every time he gets hit, he throws twice as many punches in return, if not more. I see that kind of game plan playing out here. And I wonder how much is Figueiredo's low pace a product of him not wanting to gas. You know what I mean? And it could be a non-factor, right? Because Romero, in the Paulo Costa fight, we would assume that's we know for a fact that actually that's a big reason for Romero's low pace. And even so, when the fight was brought to him, he was still there to just throw bombs for 3 rounds. Although maybe it's better to say he didn't throw bombs, and that's probably why he lasted. And I'm not 100% sure Figueiredo can do that. I don't know. A lot of unknowns in this fight for me. A lot of unknowns. I do not have a super good read on anyone having a key advantage, which makes it a fantastic title fight, but do you see these two phenomenal grappling games playing a factor?
I'm not sure, because the question there is, who do you expect to initiate the takedowns?
Right? It might just be a knockdown. That's a possibility, although has either guy ever been knocked down?
So yeah, that was the other thing I was trying to think, has Moreno ever been badly hurt by someone?
Right.
And I know he kind of got the shit kicked out of him by Sergio Pettis.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where he was just consistently being upset at what was happening. He wasn't, ever in danger of being finished. He was just oh, you're mad and getting outclassed. And
get this, flyweight history. This is a lesson in flyweight parity for you. The one knockdown recorded by Fight Metric on Brandon Moreno's UFC career came at the hands of Ryan Benoit.
Ryan Benoit does hit hard as hell.
He does. Yeah, he does. It was his second UFC fight, so quite a while ago. He's insanely durable. As we've both said multiple times, one of his more memorable fights is him just getting pasted for 5 rounds. That was a 5-rounder, wasn't it?
The Pantoja fight.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Both of them. There was the one on Tough too, and Pantoja is a hitter by flyweight standards. He may not be Figueiredo, but he is a serious puncher. And yeah, Moreno took many, many, many shots from him. So I don't know. I've been kind of leaning Moreno since I first considered this matchup, which probably doesn't surprise anyone because I like guys like Moreno more than I like guys like Figueiredo. But I do kind of see a scenario where he could just win rounds against Figueiredo. If he doesn't get hurt, he could just win rounds. Now, maybe Figueiredo does go for some wrestling because he's just big and freakishly strong. And that could also obviously change the factor here. But honestly, I'm not super confident that he could maintain a top position on Brandon Moreno. Alexandre Pantoja, again, phenomenal jiu-jitsu. Had a really difficult time with Moreno on the ground in both of their fights. I think he submitted him on the tough one. But it was after, both men exhausted themselves with just an absolutely reckless war. I don't know. I don't really see Figueiredo having that kind of advantage here. But maybe I'm just underestimating Figueiredo because I fundamentally do not understand guys like him. And that is certainly likely.
Yeah.
Got a pick?
Yeah, I think that. So I do think the Moreno's like primary weapon is going to be there, which is the jab.
Right. I hope so.
And I think what happens, so what happens after Figueiredo tries to counter the jab, because his classic thing is to come forward. He's basically got two punches that he really likes. One of and they're both kind of stepping forward shots. He's either. Actually, no. It's generally step back right hand or that kind of darting left. And he's got just a very nice sort of spatial sense of awareness for where people are going, so that he can push people, into one strike or the other.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is the thing. What will happen is that Moreno will throw out these little barrages of jabs, and then Figueiredo will step forward with a counter or with his own lunging jab. And then they'll be chest to chest for a second, and then they'll both try and punch each other really hard. That is sort of Moreno's main thing in the pocket, is that he just throws 3 or 4 strikes. He just absolutely fills the space in front of him.
You want to talk about granularity? Somebody who slips something into every crack that's shown to him. Yeah.
Yeah. But on the other hand, one of the things that Figueiredo does is that he just watches people punch him, and then he punches them at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I trust of the many things that Moreno has shown fantastic improvements in his boxing. But I'm not sure if I trust his defense in those situations against someone who's just, could potentially pick up 2-3 knockdowns.
Yep.
And also, I do kind of find myself wondering, he is so heavy on the front foot. What if Formiga just low kicks him?
Formiga? You mean Figueiredo?
Sorry, Figueiredo.
Bitch. How could you? Rest in peace, Formiga. Gone too soon. Yeah. God, there's just a million fucking options here. And the thing is that Figueiredo, I think he is very tactically flexible, just out of sheer timing. He really can push forward, pull back. He'll add in a low kick. I'm watching his fight with Pantoja right now. He does even go for takedowns as a response to pressure. I think it's one way that he sort of coped with the whatever stamina issues he may have just been beginning to deal with at stages in that fight, was to grab onto Pantoja as he leaps in and tie up a little bit. He's a very thoughtful fighter, always in that first layer though. I don't know. I mean, that does make me feel better about Moreno's defense, right? If you're gonna be relying on a fairly rudimentary defense, and that is one of the aspects of the boxing that has improved for him. If you're gonna rely on rudimentary defense, then slipping single shots is kind of the way to go, especially if you are following those slips with combinations, with counters in combination, which he does tend to do. So yeah, it does feel like a good sort of build. But the thing that frightens me is that you could sort of feel a similar build happening at points in that Figueiredo-Pantoja fight.
Yeah.
And Figueiredo is just remarkably resourceful and good at coming up with whether creative or sheer brute force ways of staying in there and hurting you. And yeah, that is those bullshit cheater athlete knockdown numbers really are the code to get him ahead at any one moment in this fight. I don't know. Honestly, I think I would have an easier time picking my boy Brandon. My boy, the what's his nickname again? The Assassin Baby.
The Assassin Baby.
Yeah. I almost said the Baby Assassin. I almost think too, he could, if somebody were to have a strong ground advantage in this fight, I would give it to him. I was very impressed with the way that he pretty much just carved through Brandon Royval's guard, and completely denied the scrambles that he was looking for. But I just don't know if it's in Moreno's temperament. to like lean on something like that. I think it's far more like Figueiredo to look for a way to like lock down the fight for a little while. That's much more in that sort of Moreno school of, or that Yoel Romero-esque school of thought. So I'm going to pick Moreno. I see the building out of exchanges, the granularity, I think, the stamina, the staying power. These are all big. I think it works because Figueiredo doesn't throw combinations all that often. But there's going to come a point where Figueiredo realizes he's not getting hurt and just steps in with an elbow or a right hand or something and hurts Moreno. I see it. So I don't know.
I mean, the fact that Moreno, like we said, has never really been badly hurt by anyone.
Good sign for him, yeah.
Is a good sign. But yeah, I mean, we mentioned, like, in terms of sort of brute physicality, that the Figueiredo versus Perez fight could have been like sort of Lawler Hendricks of just, you know, two big hosses going at each other. I think that the dynamic of it for this one, you know, whichever way it goes, it's definitely more along the lines of, like, Bobby Knuckles Romero.
Yes.
It's that one guy is just going to have to, like, build huge volume advantages whilst trying not to get killed.
Yes. And being a flyweight, you know, I think is a sort of advantage for the Romero style. Because at the very least, gravity is less of a weapon. Again, Figueiredo has never had such direly low output fights as Romero. He's always been just the flyweight Romero. The flyweight is an important part of that title. So yeah,
he's just much more willing to do one thing to push you into like another. I think much more willing to like throw that cuffing like right hand, sort of the throwaway left hand into the like into the big stepping right kind of thing.
Yeah, he definitely does have he's more willing to like stick in there than Romero. He'll hit you with a shot and he'll keep his eyes on you. Figueiredo has fantastic eyes and does not flinch, does not look away, like in the midst of a crazy swinging exchange. They're not really combinations, but he will string attacks together, just because he's got good vision and he knows that whatever he hits you with, like, affects you and buys him a moment of time to line up his next shot. It's sort of Gaethje-esque actually in that way too. From the Gaethje that we saw against Tony Ferguson in particular.
Yeah. Against Pantoja, like huge amounts of his success in that fight was simply literally just riding his chin and power. Like Pantoja would just throw endless combinations against him, and Figueiredo would just walk through them until he could punch him as hard as he could.
And if you're like getting hit on the chin, but you have the posture of a man who has just slickly shoulder rolled a shot, you might be able to convince the judges and your opponent that you're slicker than you are, buying you just enough time to detonate the opponent's head with the flick of a finger. So who's your pick?
I think I'm going to pick Figueiredo.
Yeah.
Just because I think that like the fight will close into those sort of pocket bursts, and I don't know if Moreno I don't know if he has an escape route other than, punch until they go away.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, he's up against a chin and a power differential. Because as I said, that was the Pantoja-Figueiredo dynamic. Figueiredo, he didn't win those exchanges because he was like a technically superior fighter. He just won them by walking through Pantoja's shots until he could punch him harder than Pantoja had been hitting him, which was still very hard.
Yep.
So yeah, and I think Moreno's going to have to show a way to disengage from those situations, because the Formiga approach of just scaring the opponent off is not gonna cut it.
I'm sorry. The final 10 seconds of Pantoja Figueiredo. Davison just gets hit on the chin like 8 times in a row. The same right hand over and over, and he just keeps trying to counter it as he's being hit. I think you're on the one of many possible right tracks in this fight there. And I would add to that like if Moreno does allow Figueiredo to back him up, I do not think he has that kind of range boxing game. At least I'm not confident of it yet. Because even though he's got a great jab And he does build off of it really, really well. And he can even like slip and jab, and he'll double it and triple it and all these wonderful things that I'm always asking for and I like to see. I think he needs to come forward. I don't think he likes to be pushed back. I don't think he's as you said, he's like a front foot heavy, fundamentally aggressive fighter. If he's going to be using his reach, it is going to be to intimidate the opponent, and to follow them as they try to get away from him, not to keep them at bay. So I think it's, goes without saying, an absolute banger of a matchup. It's going to be very entertaining, and I can't wait. And I just hope both these guys are getting paid for stepping in on 2 weeks' notice, both of them, for a title fight at the top of a pay-per-view. Strange times, but it should be a fantastic fight. Let's go ahead and take a break, since we've talked for half an hour, i.e. 20 minutes at least, about the actual fight. When we come back, Tony Ferguson versus Chucky Olives, a hell of a co-main event. We're going to get a lot of opportunities, I think, in this next segment to talk about where we think T-Ferg is at right now. And then Renato Moicano versus Rafael Fiziev, Kevin Holland, the boy, versus Jacare Souza, and possibly more after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to the Fighter Slander Hour, or rather the Fighter Slander Quarter Hour, or more likely 20 to 25 minutes, as we're here to talk to you about Tony Ferguson and Charles Oliveira. One man is a shell of his former self, the other, a coward. Phil? Phil, what do you say?
You have summed it up perfectly.
That really was the basis of the conversation we were just having before starting the recording again. I guess I'll elaborate a little bit for those who weren't party to our discussion. Phil, you said to me, "Hey Connor, I just watched Tony Ferguson's fight with Edson Barboza for 20 seconds, and then I watched his fight with Justin Gaethje for 20 seconds, and oh my God, he's a corpse. The contrast is so very stark." And you were correct. The contrast is stark. If you don't believe us, go do the exact same experiment. Jump to any random 20-second stretch of the Edson Barboza fight. If you're as lucky as me, you'll go immediately to the section where he's hammer-fisting Edson Barboza from a 50-50 leg knot on the ground. And then jump to any 20-second section from the Gaethje fight, or from the Cerrone fight, or the Pettis fight. And, yep, the man is, well, really just way slower. That's the thing that really stands out. Foot speed, hand speed, reaction time. It's not surprising. It shouldn't be surprising, but it will put things, I think, in perspective. The contrast, and how age and wear and tear have affected Tony Ferguson. And then the thing about Charles Oliveira being a total pussy, which that's how Phil phrased it. Sorry, Phil. I know you didn't want me to say that on air, but,
I don't think it was.
I'm sorry. You said minge. That's right. I forgot. You used a really British word for it. The thing with Charles Oliveira that we still wonder is he a little bit of a quitter? And I'm using all of these terms, which are very harsh, and I don't mean to disparage the man. I would quit at all of the moments that Charles Oliveira has sort of realized he doesn't really want to be fighting anymore. I certainly would. Charles Oliveira has not quit at a lot of moments when I absolutely would have, and certainly has improved on what was an early career tendency to kind of just get bullied and sunned by his opponents a little bit. Certainly in his fight with David Tamer, for example, Charles Oliveira gets hurt, gets his eye poked. In addition to that, we have the whole confluence of both frustration and like pain and anxiety coming together. Usually has not been a good look for him in the past, and he overcame that and won the fight. And in fact, got mad and started to bully Tamer. So I do think something has changed. That as with many fighters who do develop their styles, Oliveira has like found new layers of fighting personality to sort of paper over what I do still think are likely to be some inherent flaws. And I was going to go down the path I usually go down, Phil, of like, well, how successfully has he patched those weaknesses? And then you raised a very interesting point in that wonderfully reductive way you have, which was, well, I'll let you say it. What's the difference between when Charles Oliveira looks confident and when he doesn't?
Charles Oliveira doesn't like fighting tall people.
And I think that's it. It sounds too simple to be true. But, you know, you look at a lot of these losses and they're against people his size or taller. Paul Felder, his size but bigger. Anthony Pettis, to my surprise, his height. Who were the others?
Max Holloway is the classic
Of course.
example, I think. Yeah,
Max, which is also probably the best example of Oliveira. And again, I do not mean to disparage him, but the best example of him quitting. I do not think he wanted that fight to continue because he was getting carved up for the 1.5 minutes that it lasted. And then there was, I think, even one more, wasn't there? Donald Cerrone.
I mean, again, when you go back to like the Cerrone-Miller kind of era, you're getting to the point at which he was at such a wide experience.
Yeah. He was like a boy.
Such a wide experience gulf at, you know, you can't really attribute that kind of stuff to being like, to having a predilection for it. You're just like, oh yes, of course. And if anyone would lose to Donald Cerrone at that stage in their career.
Sure. He had what happened to him, what happened to like Miles Jury when he fought Donald Cerrone. Yeah. It felt like a boy fighting a man. So maybe not altogether relevant, but, as you said before, Phil, like it really does sort of lend some context to why Oliveira was so insanely insistent on staying a featherweight, even when he kept missing the limit like 3 or 4 fights in a row. And even after going to flyweight for years, he was still talking about going back to featherweight. He probably still thinks he's going to be a featherweight again. And yeah, I think it's like he really derives comfort from the size and especially the height and reach advantages. And yeah, that's an interesting factor here because he ain't going to have it. He ain't going to have either against Tony Ferguson, at least I don't think. Let me check the numbers.
Tony Ferguson is like 6 feet tall and has real long arms.
Yeah, Tony Ferguson is a lightweight's lightweight. So anyway, yeah, give me your thoughts on the matchup. We've sort of covered.
So I mean, I think the whole height thing is like somewhat facetious, but you know, it is. I do genuinely think that like it is a big part of his personality, but it is also keyed into like a significant dynamic about Charles Oliveira, which is that he has horrendous defense.
Yes.
Like defensively incredible, but I think again like rewatches of things like the Tamer fight and the Kevin Lee fight, like lots of him just bolt upright, walking the other guy down.
Yeah.
And the main thing is that he just puts out enough firepower for the other guy like wilts and starts to move away, at which point, you know, Charles Oliveira is fantastically good offensive striker. He has incredibly clean punching mechanics. He kicks to the body, and then, you know, if they panic and shoot on him, he just submits them. Still just, I mean, doesn't respond to strikes coming back at him in any way. Like, looking back at the Kevin Lee fight, I was like, would he actually not just lose to Cub Swanson in almost exactly the same way? Like,
just give him the Cub Swanson who fought Doo-Ho Choi, and yeah, it might be the same.
Yeah, I mean, even then, like, Cub Swanson was starting to lose a bit of pop, but like, when I was thinking of it was like sweeping body shot into overhand right? That was the Swanson combination. Yeah. Like, he would eat that exactly the same way.
Yeah, he really would.
As he used to.
He really would.
It would just that he has, you know, And also, I think there are some ways in which I think he's lost a bit with more comfort on the feet. He's also lost the ability to just press forward into the clinch as much as he used to. I think now this might be just like a tactical choice. I might generally be underselling him as just a smart fighter.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he used to have before is that pretty much his game was very much put together in terms that he would just throw long punches and kicks from range, but he would always be marching forward. Then he would come into the clinch, and then he would absolutely sell out the takedowns. And all of that worked pretty well. Whereas, in some ways, it reduced the amount of time that he spent just standing up and having terrible defense.
Yeah.
Now he's more likely to have like a mid-range striking battle with someone where he's more confident in his hands, less likely to just like run into grappling situations. Because again, I mean, mentally, that kind of thing did put him into grappling situations where he was so confident that he was the aggressor there that he got submitted, like against Pettis and Lamas.
Right, yeah.
I think, stylistically, sometimes that might be the way to go. He might still want to walk into the clinch. Like, for example, a win of his that surprised a lot of people was Jeremy Stevens. And I think that was the dynamic for that one came from his ability to just move from striking into the clinch very, very quickly.
Yeah.
If he'd fought Jeremy Stevens at mid-range, he just would have lost eventually on like pure durability.
Absolutely. And I do think like I'm going to give Oliveira some credit here. First, I'll mention I do think his defense has grown. I mean, it again, it doesn't take much to grow from zero because it really was like non-existent before. It was either a double forearm guard, a high guard, or it was just still walking forward, but without that, where he would literally just walk into shit. He has like a step back now. He has he'll pull his back foot out of range without even moving his front foot just to create enough space that he's still there to come back with a counter. That's something he didn't do before. He clearly has a much greater sense for and comfort with his range, and understands that when he's at his range, he can fight in layers and actually respond to what's happening and not just barrel in. The other thing is, I think he probably still can get into the clinch. He did end up in the clinches with Kevin Lee and did have an advantage there. And with David Tamer, I think there were a couple of clinch exchanges. We still see he's very effective in that distance. It's just that he doesn't have to be there anymore. And before, it was very clear in certain matchups. And again, don't undersell it. It might be reductive, but I think it's definitely hitting on something true. Like against Hatsu Hioki, who's very tall and lanky. Oliveira was right into the clinch every single chance he got. Even though Hioki is not a great striker and is in fact pretty dangerous on the ground, Oliveira was still desperate to get into that range because he clearly hated the feeling of being at distance with a long, tall opponent. So yeah, I think that is a factor. It's going to affect this fight. But technically and tactically, I think Oliveira has really only gotten better. I think perhaps a more interesting question even than what about his clinch game? Because I don't know how effective that would really be against Ferguson anyway, to be honest. Ferguson will absolutely throw down in the clinch with him and is just as tall. Unlike, say, Jeremy Stevens, that's not going to be like an innate advantage just getting to that range. But it is interesting to wonder, what about his takedowns? Because Oliveira used to be a great double leg guy. And I say used to be. It has only been 3 fights since he's completed a takedown, and truly he hasn't needed them. Kevin Lee hit all the takedowns he needed in their fight. Jared Gordon required no takedowns. He was out of there in just over a minute. And was it David Tamer before that, or was that the Nick Lentz 9? Nick Lentz 9. Nick Lentz also hit 2 takedowns. And so Oliveira got to work some on the ground, but didn't have to force the issue. It was Lentz trying to grapple, and he was making him uncomfortable by forcing striking on him instead. So yeah, I want to give Oliveira credit. I think it's impossible for us to say that he hasn't gotten much, much better in lots of ways. Mentally, technically, decision-making. He's just clearly a much more comfortable and relaxed fighter because he has a new bedrock of technique to rely upon. And I think that even includes, to some degree, his defense. To some degree. Yeah, okay.
I think that's true. Like, he's gone from being an action fighter to being a, like, genuine, like, elite.
Yeah. He has an elite process. Like, his system works, and he's confident that it's gonna work, which really does sort of change the whole feeling of everything he does. He knows he's gonna take over at some point. Now again, how durable is that new layer? Because I do think it's most of these changes that fighters go through, most stylistic changes are sort of a facade. It's a series of band-aids because it's really difficult to really change as a person. Most people just develop coping mechanisms, and that's what like new techniques are for fighters with stylistic personality weaknesses, shall we say, that affect their fighting abilities. So, yeah, and can Tony Ferguson still bring them out? Like, we've talked a lot about Oliveira and his defense and everything. We just mentioned that Tony Ferguson's slower. But that Justin Gaethje fight aside, I do still think he's mostly Tony Ferguson. Mentally, I have much less reason to believe. Well, I don't believe either man has changed all that much, is what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, so there's one really interesting dynamic, which is that for all that Ferguson is like visibly worse in these last three fights, he's visibly slower. I think he's fighting at a lower pace. I haven't really looked at the numbers, but he's just,
I'll check for you.
Getting into ugly brawls. The one interesting thing, which I think he might be picking up on as, an aging, slower fighter, is that he's actually not having his terrible first rounds as much.
Mm-hmm.
A bit more, like, defensively sound.
Interesting point, yeah.
And honestly think this is still basically Oliveira's main chance for victory. Wouldn't necessarily be one that surprised me. Much as I'd said it wouldn't have particularly surprised me if Pettis or Cerrone had done it. Mm-hmm. Is that he just wipes Ferguson out in the first 5 minutes. Ferguson still likes to take risks on the ground. He's still pretty hittable, although I think not nearly as hittable as Charles Oliveira.
No.
But yeah, the Gaethje fight, I mean, if nothing else, it shows that he's still got an incredible chin.
Mm-hmm.
And much of the early going was Gaethje started to pull away in that first round through a lot of simultaneous exchanges. A lot of times when they'd like trade left hooks, trade right hands.
Yeah.
It was eventually just like Gaethje starting to like really force Ferguson out of it with like power and durability differential. He's just a better puncher. And then after that,
kind of what Ferguson usually does to other guys.
Yeah. And after that, Gaethje was able to like key on the defensive. He was able to like defend against Ferguson more effectively and slip his shots and so on, and the gap became kind of wider as it went on. But in the early going, it was a lot of like dual exchanges. And do I trust Charles Oliveira to win that fight against Tony Ferguson? Don't really. Mm-hmm. Even a visibly slower Tony Ferguson, like. People have not necessarily needed to be super fast to beat Charles Oliveira. Again, like it's just the defense thing. He's just there to be punched if you want to punch him. It's just that something is coming back at you now the whole time.
Mm-hmm. From the numbers, it doesn't look nothing stands out as screamingly obvious to suggest that his rate has dropped, his output rate. So I think it's more or less similar to what it's always been. It's hard to tell for sure at a glance, especially for someone who's terrible at math like me, because so many of Ferguson's fights, well, in fact, almost all of them, don't end by decision. So you're not getting a full idea of over 15 minutes. This is how many he threw in this fight. But back to the RDA fight, 199. Tony Ferguson fight, 136. Cerrone fight, 104 over 2 rounds. I mean, it's still very, very high outputs. So Tony Ferguson, still mostly Tony Ferguson, just a slower version. And yeah, I do think that is a good sign for him. The other thing, beyond even just the defense, we're sort of tacitly assuming neutral exchanges, but we know what's going to happen when Tony Ferguson does start to get those trades, and they're going to have to be trades at first. I agree with you. I mean, they were, even when Ferguson was better, they were mostly trades to begin with. But after those first few exchanges, he's going to start pushing Oliveira backwards. And David Tamer did that to an extent, and Oliveira did get to show off improved footwork, and he was at his range. But Ferguson has the reach. And just to put some numbers on it, he is 2 inches taller. He's 6 foot, as you said before, and he has a 2.5 inch reach advantage. And the other thing about Ferguson, one of his favorite moves, and I think this is because he loves to both pressure and use his reach, is that absolutely hideous full-powered low kick he loves to throw. And you know the one, if you've watched him fight, where he just leaps into it. Really, really good, artificial cage cutting kind of tool. Really good corralling weapon. That combined with weird lunging, shifting combinations, bizarre spins, all of that does suggest to me that if Oliveira does get put on the back foot, it's not going to be nearly as easy as it was against David Tamer to stop that momentum or to reverse it.
Front kicks to the body as well, probably worth calling out, given that Oliveira
Yes.
has typically sort of struggled pretty badly with body work.
Yes, absolutely. And Ferguson throws a very good one of those. So yeah, I just think it's probably a good sort of last hurrah opportunity for Tony Ferguson, to be honest. I don't think this man is making it back to a title shot ever again, but I do think he's still the more sort of tried and true, just gritty animal of a fighter between these two. And I think you take one look at this matchup and you kind of know in your bones that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to be a scrap. So yeah.
Agreed.
All right, both of us picking T-Ferg. I don't feel particularly good about it because I didn't feel good about how he looked in the Gaethje fight, but it does seem like the rational pick. And I will say, just for a dose of rare optimism on this show, there is a part of me that thinks maybe Tony Ferguson just needed that Gaethje fight. I think we talked about this after, but that man was clearly carrying so much pressure in his head from this massive win streak, this title fight that just kept slipping out of his hands, the litany of injuries, the fact that he was just the number one guy for so long, and for every number of reasons, for any number of reasons, he couldn't get there. And then he got the chance, a version of the chance, but not the one he was supposed to get, and then he lost. But afterwards, everything I heard from Tony Ferguson was it wasn't just the same old, this guy is a maniac, pro fighter level of confidence. It was there was relief in how Tony Ferguson was talking on his social media and everything. He was, I don't know, yeah, he just seemed like he got back into camp and was enjoying it, which he did not seem to be doing up to that point. We mentioned that as well, I think, the sort of the forced Tony Ferguson craziness, that he was just playing his role and didn't seem to have his heart in it. So I hope to see a at least mentally sort of rejuvenated Tony Ferguson who really wants to go out there. I think he could stumble into a win anyway just because of who he is, but I would love to see him go out there and not get swamped in the first round. Or maybe he should. And that's the secret to unlocking classic T-Ferg. But I would love to see him go out there and look confident and get the job done. That would make me feel good. So rooting for him as well as picking him.
I mean, as much as we've mean to Chucky Olives on this episode, it would be great to see him win. Always great to be proved wrong and see someone win a war.
Oh, absolutely,
a real war.
Oh, imagine Chucky Olives winning a Tony Ferguson war. Come on,
yeah.
You would have to immediately stop talking about him as.
Yeah.
Go on.
Because it's such a rare thing to see. Like,
Yeah.
a Dustin Poirier type, just like visibly panicked into losses before.
Yeah.
And just turning into just a blood and guts warrior.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe he can. Like I said, that Tamer fight, you and I, based on how we still feel about Oliveira, we would never have predicted him to be able to survive a sequence of events like that. And to come back to like aggressively regain control of the fight. So yeah, maybe, man. I would be happy to see either of these guys win. It's just that I would be more sad to see Tony Ferguson lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's also just like the way I would expect Tony Ferguson to lose. Like, I bet if he loses, as I said, I just expect him to get wiped out in the first 3-4 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be more merciful than him losing a war. So maybe that's the better option if he is going to lose. All right.
But I'm picking him anyway.
I mean, it should be a hell of a fight, and at least until it's we can wait till it's over to start questioning our morals for enjoying it as much as I'm sure we will. Let's take one more break, why don't we? When we come back, Renato Moicano versus Rafael Fiziev, Kevin Holland versus Jacare Souza, the Smack Man versus the Jacked Man, and maybe some others after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Stop.
All right. We're back. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We're going to talk about, I think, just 2 more fights from this card. Let's start off with, and honestly, both of them have, like, shall I say, troublingly simple dynamics. Although I'm less sure about how troubled I am by this first one. Renato Moicano versus Rafael Fiziev. I began my usual process of agonizing over this, but Phil, you seem to have a good handle on how this one should play out from the jump, so why don't you lay it on me?
I think basically this one comes down to, can Renato Moicano hit takedowns?
Yeah.
And from the way the dynamics in this fight look, answer is no.
Doesn't seem super likely. It could happen. Fiziev has not really had occasion to face a good takedown threat yet in the UFC. It would have been Magomed Mustafayev, but instead he just wheel-kicked his head off. Mark Jacasey is very strong and was bigger than Fiziev, but is not a technical wrestler. He just, from the beginning of his career to now, has just relied on overpowering people. And Fiziev is not a bad athlete. He couldn't be easily overpowered. Was also just a better clinch technician. But
yeah. So, I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about today has been around, there is a guy who doesn't have great amount of defense who hides behind his jab.
Yeah.
And now enter Renato Moicano.
Yes. Thematically appropriate.
Yeah, we've mentioned many times that he has a lovely jab, and he has many different things that he does off his jab.
Hey, we're not even going to talk about the Junior Dos Santos fight. But speaking of a card riddled with guys who rely on their jabs in lieu of defense. Anyway, go on.
So he's, Gray dates his jab. He kind of turns off he pivots off his jab and kind of strafes as he throws it. Like, many nice things to like about it. The Cater fight and Masterclass kind of mixing it up with the low kick. But, when someone slips it, he's in trouble.
Yep.
And Fiziev has really good defense.
And really good counters.
Really good counters to lots of different areas, like a big low kicker, a big body kicker. I mean, we were also just talking in the break about how that Jacasey fight is such a horrific display of pure athletic durability on Jacasey's part.
Cheating. Let's call it what it is.
Gets torn the fuck up in the first 2 rounds. And then after those 2 rounds, he was like, well, you're pretty tired from that disgusting ass whooping you put on me. All those body kicks that sounded like, Rocky beating up the carcasses in the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Bet they've made you pretty tired, haven't they? Got to win this round now.
Yeah.
Don't think Renato Moicano can do that. He's not a famously durable fighter.
Yeah. It really was something that he took. I completely forgot about it. I think I expunged it from my memory. The fact that he won the third round of that fight, because for most of it, he was getting the shit kicked out of him by the only fighter in the UFC who brings his own Foley artist to events. Yeah, he can't. Moicano does not have that physical durability, either in the body or in the chin. He's not a great athlete. He's not very strong. He's not particularly quick. He's just several steps behind. And again, Fiziev is not like a Mark Jacasey style athlete. I doubt Fiziev could just, eat body shots and then have his opponent acting like he's got some sort of vampiric charm on his rib cage that saps their energy the more you hit it. But he can definitely overpower Moicano, and he doesn't even need to. He can literally do exactly what Korean Zombie did. And I think that's what he's going to do. I think he might knock him out in the first round. I don't know. We haven't mentioned that we're wondering if Moicano's more durable as a lightweight or not. He might be. He might feel a little quicker, as a lightweight.
But, I'm not sure it matters because I don't know how he wins exchanges.
Yeah, I just don't think it's enough, and I don't see Fiziev is the worst possible guy for Moicano to just be able to get those first jabs going, and if he can't, then where is his game on the feet? Where are his takedowns even? Everything comes off that jab.
Yeah. I think Moicano is one of those fighters where even though he is a striker, I think he benefits from being as big as possible.
Yeah.
He's so range dependent.
Yes, absolutely.
And, relatively flat-footed.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it seems relatively straightforward unless he's just, he's always been I think he is a very intelligent fighter.
Absolutely. Strategically minded.
He has hit takedowns. They've normally been in the midst of exchanges. If he's really been working on his entries, still a great grappler if he can take Fiziev down somehow, but I just can't really see it.
Yeah, I do think that's worth highlighting. Moicano he's a heavy hands style fighter because he makes up for all of those athletic deficiencies with a really strong fighter's mindset that it just comes down to decision making or whatever you would call fight IQ or whatever. He hits the takedown at the right time. He feels the momentum shifting against him and realizes, when is the right time to jab and turn away, to turn the opponent? When is the right time to plant your feet and throw 4 hard punches? He does all of these things at the right times, but it's just, you can't, I don't think you can't get away with that sort of broad stroke strategic thinking in lieu of athletic talent, past a certain point. And Fiziev is both a better athlete and just a better striker. Especially defensively, which will be his way into range against a guy who doesn't really have that big of a reach advantage. Certainly not as much as he would like. So, a pretty easy Fiziev pick. How about this next one, though? Kevin Holland and Jacare Souza. This one, as you said, Phil, just comes down to how shot Jacare is, really. But even then, I don't really know what to make of it. That seems like more than enough reason to pick Jacare. He's not only just, an insane athlete, he's way bigger than Kevin Holland in particular. He's probably got, I don't know, does Kevin Holland even weigh in at 185?
I don't think he did the last time he fought, right?
183 or something like that.
Yeah.
He's done it before. So has Joaquin Buckley, actually. I know that. But Jacare Souza fought at 205 in his last fight. And has never looked like he would be small for 205. He's a big, muscular guy. And that seems like more than enough reason to pick him. Except, I don't know. How much weaker is Kevin Holland than Jack Hermansson, Phil? How much weaker especially is this Kevin Holland, the one who like seems to have a vested interest in winning his fights?
He's definitely a much worse grappler.
I
think he is,
Is he?
I think he is just, smaller than Jack Hermansson, which does. Kevin Holland is definitely a much worse grappler than Jack Hermansson. Come on.
Yeah, I guess. It depends on what you mean by worse. Like, I think he can do most of the things Jack does. I just think he's kind of making it up as he goes along. Functionally worse, is maybe how I would soften that. I think Kevin Holland is quite a technically skilled grappler. He's just, will just allow, if the last time we saw extended grappling from him anyway, would just allow long periods of the fight to drift away without getting anything done or improving his position. Hermansson is like, he knows exactly what he wants to do to you the moment he gets to the ground. He wants to get on top of you, and he wants to beat you up and submit you quickly. So there's a difference in process, I think, more than technique, but maybe I'm just being a super fanboy. Tell me, am I?
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, one of the reasons this sticks in my head is one of my picks when I was wrong recently, when I was like, Brendan Allen's going to be too physical for your boy Sean Strickland.
Oh, yeah.
He just wasn't.
He was not.
He wasn't like a physical middleweight force, but he still chucked Kevin Holland around a lot. Body locked him and took him down almost immediately, and then they had just like a big long fence grappling exchange. And then eventually submitted. Eventually submitted Kevin Holland, admittedly, because Holland kept, Holland did keep engaging in the grappling even when he was escaping. And even, get some pretty strong positions on Brendan Allen. It just remains to be seen. It just remains that he was taken down almost immediately.
Yeah.
Unless, occasionally you do get the ones where you do get fights where this dynamic is so pronounced that the fairly dynamic striker just wipes the other dude out.
Mm-hmm.
A Lineik Harris or whatever. But just can't see it for Jacare. Again, it's like the Ferguson thing. We haven't seen. Jacare hasn't lost the things that he would need to lose for this in order for him to get killed by Kevin Holland. He's still super tough.
Yeah,
he's just slow. But the sheer size and physicality advantage is presumably still going to be there. And if he gets a body lock takedown on Kevin Holland probably isn't getting up again.
I wish this was a 5-rounder, because Kevin Holland would get tired, but I also think he's so relaxed he'd probably find a second win before Jacare did.
I think Kevin Holland is getting submitted.
No, Phil, don't say that. It's not true, okay? Brendan Allen is a better submission grappler than Jacare. That's why he submitted Kevin and nothing else. Yeah, probably. I don't know. It's the physical strength thing that does kind of throw me. Because I don't know, Kevin Holland definitely noticed it against Darren Stewart. There was a difference. Darren Stewart's a very strong dude, and he didn't just fling Kevin Holland around. But the willingness to grapple is really not a good sign. And again, this is where it is very important that it is not Jack Hermansson's kind of willingness to grapple. It is not I'm going to grapple a Jacare because I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm confident that I can beat him in these particular positions that I really like. It's more of, I'm willing to grapple because I'm the smack man, bitch.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to take me down anyway, even if I'm the one doing it.
Yeah.
It's got to be Jacare.
Yeah, this is the thing. He's like Glover in that even though he's old as hell, he's never stopped doing the thing he does.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Still has a very clear process that he will try to do as hard as he possibly can.
In many ways, Jacare is a better boxer now than he ever has been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a lot of ways, his game has actually expanded. He's just physically depleting, but the body work and he's a better combination puncher. Still not a ton of combinations from this guy, but he's better than he used to be. His defense is more varied than it used to be. He's a really consistent, aggressive counterpuncher. And yeah, you're right. There was still, yeah, okay.
Huge amounts of that, and let's not forget this abysmal Blachowicz Souza fight.
Yeah,
were just Jacare just holding Blachowicz up against the cage.
Right, and Blachowicz is a big, strong man.
Way
bigger
than and poor Kevin Holland. Kevin isn't surviving those positions.
You could fit 4 Kevin Hollands into just Jan Blachowicz' upper body. So yeah, You're right. You're right. I'll let my hopes and dreams die. I guess I'll be double hoping for Brandon Moreno in the main event. But that's pretty much all we have time to cover. There are other things that would be worth touching on. I think Cub Swanson versus Daniel Pineda. Phil, I know you're sort of a closet Daniel Pineda fan, aren't you?
Yeah, he's always been great fun.
He's a super fun fighter, and of course, so is Cub Swanson. And Swanson, like Jacare, a guy who I think in some ways still keeps sort of adding to his craft and trying out new things, even though he's definitely declining. That's great. I love that Mackenzie Dern has a fight with someone who's going to be willing to grapple with her and possibly capable of hanging with her, although that really still remains to be seen. And I think Gavin Tucker...
You've now cursed us with a kickboxing match.
That would be great too. That's fine. I like seeing Mackenzie Dern throw stupid right hands. Yeah, it'll be fine. And Gavin Tucker, Billy Quarantillo is really good. Yeah. Gavin Tucker, great outfighter, good counterpuncher, increasingly interested in wrestling people. Billy Quarantillo just marches you down more and more and more with each passing minute. So that is a guaranteed action style matchup there.
Chance for Gavin Tucker to re-win the Rick Glenn fight.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. It really is. He got the like Sam Cecilia, Justin James version of pressure. Now he gets like a genuine type of pressure that will not stop. So it's a hell of a good card. In bizarre circumstances, it's way, way better than I could have hoped for. And again, it all kind of seemed to sneak up on me. But we will be back next week to talk to you about the results. In addition, coming up next on the UFC schedule is Wonder Boy versus Jeff Neal. That's not even the main event. Aldo versus Cheeto is happening in that card. So tune in next week for my emotional breakdown. Because that's going to be really hard. You saw how much trouble I had just accepting that Kevin Holland is a worse grappler than Jacare. So wait till next week when
This is just going to be me talking and muffled sobs just coming from the other side.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's also got the bizarre Pettis versus Moreno. It's got Moraes versus Rob Font. It's actually kind of a good looking card. We'll see how long that lasts. Until then, what else we got going on? Oh, couple important items of business, actually. Make sure you check out the Patreon. Later this week, we are going to be recording, I think the plan is now, commentary for Fight Circus 2. We were going to just watch it and then talk about it, but now we're watching it together. So tune in to the Heavy Hands Patreon, $3 a month, and you can experience the MMA Depressed Us Freak Show edition with me and Phil experiencing.
Connor has already watched it, but I will be going in as a Fight Circus virgin.
I skipped a lot of the filler between, and that is a really big part of the atmosphere of this event, I can tell you. It's sort of the the cringe-inducing commentators, the sort of strange feeling that you're like watching. I don't know. It sort of feels like they're like stupid freak show fights, but there's just a hint of like Russian roulette in Deer Hunter is what you're watching. Like, this shouldn't be happening. Something unsanctioned is going on here. So yeah, make sure you tune into the Heavy Hands Patreon for that. There should be a fight commentary up there as well by the time you hear this episode. Juan Francisco Estrada versus Carlos Cuadras. Very, very good fight that I enjoyed a great deal. And then finally, And I'll probably add in another note at the top of the show. We have merch, which has been a very long time coming. We've had this beautiful graphic from John Galong for ages. And it looks beautiful on a t-shirt or a sticker or a magnet or a mug or a hoodie or whatever. So you should find Heavy Hands on redbubble.com. That is who we're using to do on-demand printing. And they're pretty reasonable prices, folks. So make sure you get yourself some Heavy Hands gear before Christmas. And I guess that's it. Find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. Buy a shirt.
Excellent plug.
Yeah. Alrighty.
So, like, unconsciously, you didn't ask us if we had anything else to plug, because this is the most important thing.
It is.
Money. Merchandise.
Give coins. Give money.
Beginning of the Heavy Hands merchandising empire.
Oh.
Starts now.
Oh, it's going to be beautiful. We're going to sell 3, 4, possibly even 5 items.
At least one to, like, me.
Oh, yeah, me too. I'm probably going to buy an apron.